Throughout this story, I would like for all of you to please keep in mind that I was 20 years old and very, very naive. You're going to think that I was stupid, and I was. I'm probably lucky to be alive, and man, do I know that. I kick myself whenever I think about this day. I just wanted to get some other opinions, and I don't know, maybe I was wrong about him. So, about 20 years ago, I was walking down the road in a not-so-great area. It was summertime and I was dressed appropriately for the heat, shorts and a tank. I'm very thin and was downright skinny then, and got mistaken for a sex worker more times than I care to admit. This may or may not be important to the story, I'm really not sure, but I thought that I would mention it. So anyways, like I said, I was walking to pick up my son from daycare, and as I was going about my way, a truck full of men started to catcall and follow me. They turned around several times to yell at me out of the window, and I was getting a little bit nervous about it. I was passing a gas station parking lot, and a man not much older than myself stopped in a nice car and asked if I would like a ride. He didn't seem scary, and honestly, he was attractive, so I said okay, and I got into this car. So, I get into the car with him, and he asks where I'm going. I tell him that it's about a mile straight down the road that I'm on, and he starts out going the wrong way, and just tells me that he needs to turn around. I pay little mind to this. He starts to ask me about myself, so I tell him I was escaping a DV situation and was staying in a women's shelter nearby. I was telling him how closely my activities were monitored, and that I was due to pick up my son any minute. And honestly, I think this may have actually been what saved me. At some point, I noticed that he takes another wrong turn, but I don't know the area all that well, so I point it out, and he says that he's taking a shortcut or something, and I just go back to talking like an idiot. But then I get a whiff of something. I know that that smell now is the smell of death or decomposition. I know this for sure now, in fact. I didn't back then, but I turned around and looked into the back seat, looking for spoiled food or something that would cause this. The car is absolutely spotless, though. I bring up the smell, and he brushes it off and changes the subject. But for some reason, the smell just started getting stronger. Me, being the young idiot that I was, brings it up again. "What is that smell?" I say. And he says that he doesn't know. Probably something that he forgot to take out and has gone bad or whatever. When I tell you guys, though, that there was not a crumb in that vehicle, I was absolutely baffled. But eventually, he drops me off safe to my destination. He doesn't tell me his name, ask for my number, or give me his, and I don't think much of it until, well, much later, when I then smell that smell again. But this time, I know what it is, and it triggers the memory of that guy in that car that day. This was probably 2005 in Covington, Kentucky, and I'm very sure that him being aware that not only would I be missed, but I would be missed quickly and my movements would be tracked very specifically. I think that that was the only reason that I made it back out of that car that day. This is going to be a bit of a long one, so buckle in. This is a story about my family and myself. I'll do my best to remember all of the events and the details that I can. I apologize if some of this is hard to understand, but I'm just trying to sort of relive my childhood to tell this story. So, the year is 1993. My parents have 3 kids at the time, my older sister, my older brother, and me. 2 more sisters come in later on, but we are closing on the house, my parents' house, and this is where it all started. So as closing was coming to an end, my parents were asked if they had any more questions about the property. My mum asked Mr. G, the seller, if anyone had died in the house. Random question, I know, but Mr. G's response was, "Why? Are you scared of ghosts?" I guess that was the end of their closing, and so we eventually moved in. It was a hood city, but our neighborhood was one of those movie neighborhoods where all of the houses looked the same except for the one that we had just bought, and everyone knew everyone and everything that went on in that place. All the houses in the neighborhood were single-story, two-bedroom, a one-bath house with a kitchen and living room and a dining room. Mr. G added to the house that we had bought when he owned it, and it was a two-story, five-bedroom, three-bathroom with a beauty salon and a workshop attached to it too. I think Mr. G's wife was a hairstylist or something. So our house was the biggest in the neighborhood. Anyway, we get settled in the first week. My bedroom was supposed to be the last room on the left upstairs, but from day one I was absolutely terrified of that room. So me and my brother shared a room instead, the last room on the right. After we get unpacked and settle in, we decided to take a bit of a stroll around the block. We closed up the house, turned the lights off, shut the front door, and head out on our walk to interact with the neighborhood. We made our way around the 5 roads that made up our community, and as we made our way back to the house, we could see it in the distance. All of the lights were on in the house, and the front door was open. My mum made us stay back, about 2 houses up, while my dad went and checked the house. When my dad gave the clear, my mum called the police to make a report, and they also checked the house and didn't find anything or anyone, so it was just let go. Now, I believe that this was one of the first signs of paranormal activity in this house, and so that's why I brought it up. I don't know how much time had passed, but it was a short time, maybe a couple of days or maybe a week at most. But we did the typical welcome to the neighborhood housewarming party at our house, and a lot of neighbors came to visit and party and all that. Our next door neighbor Bill was hesitant about coming inside and stayed on the front porch, but eventually came inside and sat on the couch and drank some beer. One of the downstairs bedroom that was attached to the living room was mine and my brother's playroom or TV or Sega Nintendo room. My hamster cage was in there too, but during this party I decided to put my hamster in the ball, and Bill was loosened up by this time. And well, said hamster rolled around in this ball and made it into the living room, and Bill got quiet. My parents noticed this about Bill and asked him if he was all right. I guess Bill wasn't accustomed to hamsters and their toys and all that he had seen was a ball, but Bill said that if that ball moves one more time, that he was leaving and that he won't be back. Well, about that time, my hamster turned into the Flash and just sort of took off in this ball. Bill literally flew out the door and he just went home. He stuck to his word years later until we moved, and he just would not enter our house and would only come in the driveway or yard sometimes, but rarely he would come onto the front porch, even after my mum told him that it was a hamster in a ball. Well, we were there a few months living the 90s family life, and my mother is outside and starts a conversation with the lady across the street. We called her and her husband Meemore and Pawpaw, and this is when Meemore informs my mum that 2 ladies had actually died in our house from cancer, Mr. G's wife and daughter. Meemore also goes to say that Mr. G was a bit of a weird guy and had secret rooms built into the house behind bookshelves and all that. Secret doors and rooms full of old school firemen set up stuff, like firemen's axes, fire hoses on a reel, behind a wall, she believed. It was the wall that the stairs were on, apparently. Some people knew about the secret rooms, so I guess it wasn't entirely secret, but my mum invited me more over one day, and she was going around the house just showing us some of the rooms that were turned into regular rooms before Mr. G sold us the house. One was in our computer room, which had the stairs to go upstairs. and right beside the stairs was a built-in bookshelf. That was apparently one of the secret rooms that went under the stairs and into our laundry room. The bookshelf had been screwed shut, but if you went through the door on the other side, you could see the back of the bookshelf that still had hinges and was screwed shut to the wall on the other side so that it couldn't be opened. The upstairs bedroom, my bedroom, you could also see a faint crack on the wall that went over to the stairs in the shape of a door. It was sealed, and Meemore told us that that's where Mr. G apparently kept his safe. Well, I started elementary school, and I used to walk to school that was about maybe half a mile away through the woods. Very close, but everything seemed fine, and I had 2 younger sisters and all that. But around 4th grade, I started noticing when I got home from school just about every day that my mum would be sitting in our van, and she had a sort of little 90s handheld TV and would go to Winn-Dixie and buy an Inquiry magazine and just sit there. I used to get mad because I wanted to go to the store with her, but it was a daily occurrence. During this time, I was in elementary school, and we would witness things or experience things happening, like doors opening or closing inside the house and stuff like this. It would be slow as well, like a draft, not fast swinging opening or slamming shut, but they still definitely moved. Things were moved too. My dad played it off as drafts in the house and forgetting that we left so-and-so here or there, but I didn't know this at the time, and my mum was stressing and freaked out by this. My mum was huge on psychic Sylvia Browne on the Montel show, and at this time I'm in middle school, and my brother and I came home walking home from school one day and noticed a bag with our DVDs sitting beside the trash can, so we went to go and get them. My mum met us at the door, and we asked why they were out there, and she said that psychic Sylvia Browne said today that if you have horror movies in your house, then you are allowing the devil to enter your home. She made us throw them back out, but eventually we snuck them back into our bedroom. Me and my brother shared a bedroom at that time too. Later in the evening, my mum is still making small talk about Sylvia Browne, and one of our yearly chores was that my brother and I hung the Christmas lights up. Well, we were teens and preteens at this point, and a bit lazy, so this year we decided that we hated doing it, so we left the lights up, and it's like months past Christmas now. And during one of Sylvia Browne's episodes, my mum starts screaming at me and my brother to go and take the Christmas lights down because it's apparently bad luck to leave them up all year and something to do with Satan. This is when my brother, I didn't mention that he's 4 years older than me, but he is, makes the comment to my mum that, yeah, well, this house is already evil. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting my hair pulled and no one's there, and sometimes I hear people walking up the stairs and no one's there. My mum just burst into tears with my brother and says the same thing happens to her, and also that she has been pushed down the stairs apparently, and says that that's why she sits in the van every day, all day long, because she's so scared to be in the house by herself. So, when we leave for school, she would be right behind us to go sit in the car all day, allegedly. And at this time, my mum and dad got divorced for whatever reason. I never got into it, but my dad moved back in with his parents. I was kind of jealous at this point because my mum and brother were talking about paranormal stuff happening to them, but nothing ever really happened to me. I was pretty much unbothered by spirits, to be honest. My mum started calling them spirits instead of ghosts or demons. My guess is that she was hoping to ease her own mind or something, but I was going to leave this part out, but I'll tell it anyway just in case it's meaningful in some sense. I was home alone one day, and my mum and brother and little sister went to the grocery store or something, and I, for reasons I won't get into, tried to end myself with a belt. I remember seeing the light, but I don't know, I didn't make it that far, and I woke up on the ground with a massive headache and the belt was broken. I never spoke of this again, but looking back, I can only think that the spirit saved me for whatever reason. I I got to my feet and ripped the collar off of my shirt, and when my family got home, I acted like nothing had happened, but my mum asked me what happened to my neck, and I quickly got the ripped shirt and told her that I was in the attic and my shirt got caught on a nail and almost choked me. By the way, our house has 3 attics, one on the front porch, one in the dining room downstairs, and one upstairs with the closet that was originally supposed to be my bedroom. Anyways, now my brother is curious about the attic, so we decided to go up there. We got creeped out because we found a mold of someone's teeth up there. It scared us, but we didn't let it get to us too much because we used to store our toys up there. My mum ended up getting a headboard and a bed frame from a lady because my mother wanted to get rid of her waterbed at some stage. And well, a short time later, the lady that my mother got the bed frame from actually died. My mum would accuse me and my brother of peeking into her room in the middle of the night around this time, and we swore that it wasn't us. Then, she said that she would see these solid black shadowy figures as tall as the door frame looking in her room. There were apparently 2 of them. My mum put 2 and 2 together, and her theory was that whatever spirits were in the house didn't like the bed frame because there is possibly a spirit attached to it. She quickly got rid of that bed frame. So it's coming up to Christmas time again, and I get a remote control truck from my grandmother. Well, me and my brother are in our room watching MTV, and the RC truck just starts moving by itself. It drove itself out of my bedroom door and just stopped. My brother smacked me in the head and said to stop playing with it or go downstairs because he's trying to watch TV, probably the Tom Green show. I told him that I wasn't playing with it though, that I had forgot it and left the remote control at my grandmother's house. We looked at each other and he told me to go and get the truck, and so I picked it up and he said take the batteries out of it because it's probably just interference with the cordless or something like that. I don't know, it made sense back then. Well, I opened the bottom and it only has 1 of the 4 AA batteries in it. We got a little bit scared by that, and so I put the truck under my bed, and really that's where it lived for the rest of its life. Now, I got into a little bit of trouble at middle school and had to be homeschooled at one stage. I completely changed my daily schedule and I would stay up all night talking to people in chat rooms. We had a web TV, not a PC, and when my brother's alarm clock would go off for him to get up for school, that was my alarm clock to end up going to bed. This was our daily and nightly routine pretty much all school year. And well, in the time that I'm up, the computer room, which is off of the kitchen, and had the laundry room in it, we had a curtain that separated the kitchen from the computer room, and I started noticing that the curtain would move. Not blowing, but crease and move as if someone was using their arm to move it out of the way. Then the laundry room door would open, and then close. And a little while later, the laundry room door would open and close again, the curtain would crease and move again, as if someone was sort of walking back and forth from the kitchen to the laundry room. This went on all school year and into the summer. I ended up naming the spirits or ghosts or demons Heidi and Beth. I have no explanation why I chose those names, but that's what I did. Probably because I knew 2 ladies died, so I gave them female names, I guess, but this was an every night event, so I'd welcome them pretty much every time, like, hey Heidi, hey Beth, and I was never bothered by them, except for them moving the curtain and the door, I guess. I never was touched or anything, not like my mother and brother had allegedly been, but well, summer is here and my brother decided that he wanted to stay up and see what I do all night, so I introduced him to the world of chat rooms on web TV, Talk City at the time. His first night he was typing away and chatting it up with someone, and he just sort of stops mid-sentence. He said, "Is my hair moving?" He had a sort of little alfalfa looking thing on his head. I looked and his hair was moving, as if someone was flicking it. I said, "No, you're imagining stuff because You haven't ever stayed up this long." Freaked out, I tried to make light of it, and I said, "No, you're imagining stuff because you've never stayed up this long." Anyways, we live our life and share the house with these spirits. Brother gets a girlfriend and moves out. A couple of years later, I move in with my girlfriend. My mum goes downhill, heavy drinking, popping pills until it put her into the hospital in June of 2007. And then in July of the same year, the house actually catches fire. The fire department thought that it was arson, but the paperwork reads that it was undetermined. August of 2007, my mum loses her battle to alcohol, and it was after a 3-month stay in the hospital to liver failure. Only the downstairs of the house was burned. The fire department got it out and put it out pretty quickly. And well, me and my brother decide that we're going to go to the house to see if we left anything salvageable in the attic from our childhood. While in the attic in the closet, in what was supposed to be my room, something just made me start pulling back the insulation up there, and it was then that I actually found a Ouija board with a check from Mr. G to professional ambulance services and a picture of the two ladies. My guess at the time was that it was Mr. G's wife and daughter. My brother was into his emo rocker phase at that stage and decided to have the Ouija board framed and hung it up in his house on the wall above his bed, with the check and the pictures in a sort of Ziploc bag. My older sister works for a heating and air company, loved her boss, did everything for him and his other employees. We have a local dirt track racing where I live and decided to go one day and posted a picture on Facebook. My sister called me and asked if I was there though, and she was apparently in the pits, that her boss races there on the weekends or something. She told him that her bro was there and they got us from the grandstands and took us up to the pits where she introduced him to us. She said, "B, this is my boss, M, and M, this is my bro, B." She also told me that I found out that M is Mr. G's grandson. He built the house that we lived in, apparently. We talked about the house, and he confirmed that it was his grandma and aunt that died there from cancer, and how he stayed there for a while with the dogs that they had and stuff. We didn't really mention it anymore after that, and I started enjoying the weekends with my family at the dirt track, and became affiliated with the race team working on the race cars and everything like that. And well, some time passes and my brother's wife is diagnosed with cancer and, well, unfortunately, it was too late. She lost her battle to cancer fairly quickly, and my brother came to me a few weeks later and says that he wants to get rid of the Ouija board that he had framed because he has a feeling that that's why his wife had passed. That apparently he thought that he had brought some bad voodoo stuff into their home. He asked if we could just throw it away or burn it. And well, from my time watching ghost hunters and paranormal shows, I thought that I was a bit of an expert, so I thought and told him that I believe that you can't just get rid of it. You have to release the spirits or something like that. I didn't really know what I was talking about, but it hit me then. Hey, I know someone who might have some answers about it. My brother came over and I called M, my sister's boss, and I said, "Hey M, I have a bit of a weird question, but back in the day after the house burnt, we decided to snoop in the upstairs attic and we found a Ouija board. Do you know if Mr. G used it?" And then M said no, I used it. I bought it when I was 14 from the local hobby shop. He said that apparently he had tried to contact his grandma and aunt. I said that I was about to send him a picture and, well, I put the two pictures on the Ouija board and I sent him a picture of it. And he said yes. That's my board and that's my picture of my grandma, Heidi, and my Aunt Beth. Me and my brother just looked at each other, pale as we could be. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, I mentioned that when I was a teen, I randomly gave the spirits in our house the names Heidi and Beth. And to this day, I still have absolutely no understanding of how that even happened. In the end, I asked if he wanted all of it, and he said yes, so we returned all of his stuff to the original owner, him. And that's pretty much where his story ends. Me and my brother have spoken about it over the years a few times and told the story together to people and family, but still, no one believes us, so we just sort of told each other that we know the truth because we lived through it, and that we'll just have to take it to the grave with us one day. So my search and rescue pal and climbing partner were driving through the Ojai Valley. I'm not sure what highway that we were on. It was 2002 to 2003 though, and we were taking a new way to a new destination. We had just passed a sign saying Ojai Valley. There were no exits or on-ramps for many miles either way. We were on a 2-lane highway that only headed one direction. There was an overpass, but no way to access it from where we were. We came across a small red hatchback that had been in a terrible wreck. It was in the slow lane of the highway. There was no one else around, nor did we see any other vehicles during our time at the wreck. The front end of the car was smashed in, and the driver was very clearly dead. Blood was on the passenger window and windshield. The car looked like a bomb went off. Its contents were all over the road. There were 2 small animal carriers nearby in the debris. We didn't see anything moving in either of them, nor did we feel safe getting out of our rig. It was a bizarre scene, really. The vehicle had clearly ran into something huge, but there were no other vehicles, nor any dead animals or blood on the road anywhere. We were both wilderness first responders, climbing partner who was also in med school. Neither of us felt safe there, and really we knew that there was nothing that we could do anyway. We didn't have cell phone reception at the location, but had stopped just trying to wrap our heads around what we could do and what had happened. In the end, we decided to take the next exit and see if we could get some cell service. Before we could do so, a military chopper was overhead and one of their crew descended on a line. I have no clue what we witnessed, what the vehicle hit as they were in the slow lane, but it had to have been massive given the damage and the explosion of the car contents. I also have no idea why the military was there. I mean, in search and rescue, we trained with military at times, and occasionally they would assist with Coast Guard choppers that had infrared to pick up body heat. In a few times over my time with SAR, Army choppers that were nearby assisted with a capsized boat and evacuating some folks for us. So maybe these guys were in the area and they were able to respond or something? No idea. Again, we both searched the internet years later to see if there was any mention of what we saw, but we never found a thing about it. Also, there wasn't any car part debris indicating another vehicle had been involved, nor was there blood on the road like an animal had been hit. The car was right at the overpass. The car was in the slow lane, headed toward the proper direction. No tire damage. All doors closed, except the hatchback that was likely blown open by the massive damage to the front end, I would suppose, but it was almost like they had hit a massive invisible wall going like 60 miles per hour. So, this is a happy story, I guess you could say, from a time as a wilderness therapist or a guide. Slightly creepy still, and definitely pretty bewildering. Now, I realize that wilderness therapy programs, they get a lot of well-deserved hate. I worked for one that appeared ethical, and I never saw anything other than amazing care and compassion. We would take kiddos, largely very affluent kiddos with famous parents, into the wilderness for 4 weeks at a time. Doing therapy every night around a campfire, kiddos would make their own meals with the dry goods that the company supplied. Kiddos didn't have tents, but did have a 4x6 piece of tarp that we taught them to fashion into a tent using knots, rocks, and their walking stick at the entrance. Us guides and therapists just had our sleep sacks and bivy bags. The agency also had some scholarship for non-wealthy families who had kiddos who really needed help. All of the kids, rich or not, had spent a few months or maybe even years either living in a penal institution or mental health facility at least. Now, one of my favorite kids was the Cocoa Puff kid. His family had gotten a scholarship as he was placed with them after it was determined that his mother couldn't care for him due to hoarding and other mental illnesses. Even though the kid was 12, he was absolutely tiny and looked about 8. He was also having a rough transition, largely as he had been caring for multiple siblings and felt lost without them. I packed the kids' backpacks with group gear, and packs were heavy, maybe 40 to 60 pounds each. This kid had fetal alcohol effects, if not syndrome, and he maybe weighed 65 to 75 pounds. I always redistributed his share of the supplies to the older and bigger kids or myself. It just didn't seem fair to make him struggle when he had some able-bodied kiddos around. He earned his moniker too, as every time that we would get to a big hill, he would say, "I could make it up this hill if I had Cocoa Puffs. Cocoa Puffs have 14 vitamins and minerals." He was serious too, and I silently cracked up every time, to be honest. He had been in charge of walking to the store and buying food for the house with the meager funds that they had. He was smart and based his choices on nutritional value. There were no labels on the dry goods that we had given them though. Rice, beans, etc. They did have cheese and peanut butter, but we had no idea if there were vitamins and minerals in any of them, to be honest. Anyway, the last week of the trip, we would place the kids in areas about a mile or so off from the camp, in their own spaces, far away from each other and based on how comfortable we were with their capabilities. Cocoa Puff Kid was a quick learner and smart well beyond his years, so we placed him across a brisk stream that later ate one of the trekking poles, and we would go check on the kids daily. The kids, they wouldn't necessarily see us checking in on them during these check-ins, but we would get a visual on them and had a system set up where each of them had a sort of mailbox to leave us a note if things were going bad or whatever. I checked on Cocoa Puff Kid daily, as no one else wanted to cross the raging river, or stream. It was raging though, and I was low woman on the totem pole, so every day I checked on him, and there was wildlife at this site too. And one day a hawk was sitting on his hiking stick that was part of his tent, and he was talking to it, sitting a few feet away. I watched, mesmerized, not believing what I was seeing for probably 30 minutes. And one day, a large doe and her newborn were chilling at this site, the baby laying a few feet from his tent while Mum grazed. And that was kind of insane, and I've never seen anyone in my decades in the wilderness have this kind of connection with any animal. When we reunited as a group, Cocoa Puff Kid shared his stories of his encounters. He had written them in his journal as well. The other boys started to give him a bit of a hard time, and we had a strict no-lying policy, and I told the group what I had witnessed. The kid had a true gift, it seemed. I have no idea what happened to any of those kids, but I do hope Cocoa Puff Kid followed his dreams to be a game warden. A happy and wholesome, but slightly creepy backwoods story, I guess. Also of note too is that 2 of the therapists had brought their dogs, and the dogs always slept with the Cocoa Puff Kid. They weren't supposed to, but every morning we would wake up with those dogs snuggled up next to him or by his shelter. I have no idea how that kid was capable of doing these things, but I can attest to the fact that I saw it, and I don't know what to make of it. I, a 25-year-old female, live in Seattle, and yesterday I stopped at a gas station in the late afternoon. This station had 2 sets of pumps, one by the storefront and on the main road, and another parallel to the cross street, a bit further away. I parked at the pump in front of the store, and there were no other cars or people around, except for a van parked at the other set of pumps. Now, as soon as I parked, I saw a woman walking from the van and towards the store. It was a rainy, gloomy day, and she was in a floral dress that looked very cutesy and Christian cottagey sort of woman. Hopefully that paints a bit of a picture, but she looked slightly confused and was subtly sort of looking into the window of my car before she approached me after I opened my door. She was seemingly distressed and told me that she had no gas and was stranded and had to drive 30 miles to get home. I had a bit of an unsettling feeling about the interaction and told her that I was broke and I didn't have 30 miles of gas of money to help her with. She then said that she didn't want any money but needed me to come over to the car to help her. She kept repeating that I just needed to come over to the car. I had looked towards the van and noticed that the rear window was completely covered with black tape and the car looked noticeably disheveled. I knew at that point that I would be going nowhere near her car or getting out of mine at all. After refusing her multiple times, she walks back to the van. It was one of those vans with the sliding rear doors, and when she returned, she slid it open slightly and I could see that she was speaking to someone in the back seat. At this point, a Mercedes pulls up to the pump right across from her and a man gets out. She does not approach him at all and instead, she gets into the front of the van and drives off. Now, I knew from the beginning that everything about this moment felt off, but it wasn't until a few minutes after that the details, they really sunk in and I realized what that could have been. Maybe I'm being dramatic and perhaps it was nothing at all, but I do have good intuition and something just really did not feel right from the beginning of that whole encounter. This happened in Indianapolis, Indiana, roughly around the year 2004 or 2005. My ex-wife and I had our first kid. We were both young, as I was 23 and my wife was 19. At that age, we both wanted our own place and we decided to get an apartment together. We searched for a few weeks and settled on some brand new apartments that were still in the process of being built. To my knowledge, this wasn't anything but a cornfield beforehand, but I've heard other stories of these apartments being built on old Indian burial grounds. I've never found any proof of this though, and so I'm not really sure. Anyway, during the process of moving in, we would bring our pit bull over to get used to the house and explore a little bit. The first red flag was my pit bull named Phoebe wouldn't go anywhere near the place. She would sit outside the apartment and whine until we would go inside and then start barking. Looking back, it's one of the obvious signs that something paranormal was going on, but that thought just never really crossed my mind at the time. So, after everything is moved in, things seem to be going great. I worked second shift as a waiter and would often pick up hours for a few extra bucks while my wife was in cosmetology school. So after forcing my dog to become acquainted with the apartment, she seemed to be doing fine but refused to go into my son's room. I'll admit too that his room gave me a weird feeling, but as a young man I didn't think too much of it. But everything changed 3 days within being in my new home. So I was off work on a random Tuesday and took my son and dog to the local park for a few hours to just burn off some energy. We got back and my son went and took a nap, or so I thought, because when I went to go and check in on him, he was talking to himself in a full coherent conversation. Not completely abnormal for kids, I know, to make up friends or whatever, so I asked him who he was talking to, and he replied, with the scary lady in the corner of the room, as he pointed to the corner of the ceiling. I was a little bit creeped out by this, but I'm a firm believer in letting kids run wild with the imagination. I would ask him questions such as, do you know her name? How old is she? What does she look like? All to no avail, though. All I was told was that she was an older girl who was very mean, apparently. Well, fast forward a few hours later, my wife returns home and we discuss the previous situation and come to an agreement that he's just being a kid, and we went to bed that night. I was awoken by my son, though, screaming and crying in the middle of the night, so I went to go in there and check in on him. And when I went in, he was pointing at the corner of the ceiling again. My dog, though, was also staring at the corner of the room, barking. I wasn't sure what to do, so I took my son in our room and I closed his door, and everything seemed to settle down after that. The next day I go to work. I'm working a double, so I won't be home until a little bit after midnight. I call my wife every break to make sure everything's going well, and it was. But at about 11:30 I received a phone call from her saying the same things from last night are happening again, and I needed to go home at that moment. I tell my boss that I'm having a family emergency and speed as fast as I can back to our home. As I open the door, I hear the chaos going on and go straight to our room, where I find her sitting in the bed with our son. He's crying hysterically. The dog is sprinting back and forth, barking as loud as a dog can bark. My poor wife is crying due to being overwhelmed, so we leave for the night and we end up going to my parents' house. As we're driving there, my son looks at me dead in the eyes and says, "Daddy, she wanted me to tell you that she's a poltergeist." My son is 2, mind you, doesn't even know the word, has never seen or heard any conversation even remotely close to that topic, so I knew then that something weird was going on and that this wasn't all bull. We returned to the apartment the next day, and my whole house is as if it has been just completely turned upside down. My son's dresser is on the floor, all the clothes are spread out all over the room, the toy box was empty and every toy that we had was scattered around, his crib was vertical up against a wall, and it was that day that we decided that it was time to move out. Honestly, I get a bit teary-eyed even sharing this because it feels like I just haven't and cannot begin to process this whole thing. And it happened like 20 years ago now. Later that year, he actually walked in on my wife and I watching The Grudge at one stage. He dropped down to the floor though and instantly started crying and saying that apparently that was the woman that he had seen. I've always been a believer in the paranormal, or at least wanted to, but this experience made me look at life differently. Not only because my whole family was traumatized by this event, but because you just never know what's truly scary until you're up against a force that you cannot even see. This is an ongoing situation, and I'm really not sure what to do about it. So my house sits fairly far back from the road, around maybe 150 feet roughly, maybe a little bit further to be honest, but between the entrance to my driveway and my front porch, I have 3 vehicles parked that would obscure the view from anyone walking or driving by. I live in the country on a side road with no stores or anything along it or nearby even, so someone getting lost looking for an address or something out here is pretty unlikely. What I mean is that there's really no reason to be here at all, unless you know someone, and while the roads are a couple of miles long, there's only 6 houses on it because it's an agricultural area with wide gaps between neighbors. No streetlights either, literally almost pitch black out there at night. Now, about a week ago, I was waiting for the mum of the boy that I sit for to come and pick him up. It was still pretty light out, it was about 7 p.m, so it was just starting to get dimmer outside. When the kid's mum came in to get him, she and I were talking outside the car for a minute while he was finishing a match on Apex when we both heard a noise that sounded like someone trying to stifle a cough from in the kiwi orchard bordering my house. I thought that it was her kid at first because he tries to jump scare me all the time lately, despite stealth not exactly being in his wheelhouse, so coughing or laughing when he's setting up to try and get me and giving away his position is a pretty common thing at the moment. So I pretty much paid exactly zero attention to it at first. Well, a couple of minutes later, he came flying out of my room and they left, and I didn't even realize until later that was weird because who the heck was coughing in the orchard? But at that time it was just, I don't know. I didn't even register, I guess. Well, later that night I was sitting outside on my front porch just smoking. It was somewhere between midnight and like 1 in the morning. My lighter was dead, so I lit my cigarette in the house on my stove and then ran outside with it. I was sitting with my back to the road smoking. I had no porch lights on. My phone was on the dimmest screen setting because I didn't want to entice the mosquitoes that were already out there. And well, about halfway through smoking, a man spoke up from somewhere near me and asked if he could have a cigarette. It surprised me so much that I instantly just froze. Literally thought that an ad had popped up in the background tab on my phone or something. And then he said it again, so I turned around and he was right behind me. This dude was tall as well, like really tall. Somewhere between like 6'3" and 6'6" at least. Beard, long hair, barefoot, wearing maybe blue or grey pants and no shirt, and a long coat or robe. Kind of hard to tell in the dark, even though I had turned on my phone flashlight and he was 5 or 6 feet away from me, at most. Like 2 steps and he would have had his hands on me. I didn't know what to do or say, like my heart was pounding so fast that I pulled out of my pack, and when he started to step forward I said, "No, stop, you don't need to do that here," and I just tossed him the whole thing. When I told him to stop, he did, but like weird. He stopped and put his hands up to his chest height, palms out, and said that was a good idea to toss it, and then just stood there for a second. I literally didn't know what to say, and before I even had a chance to, this weird guy just backed away, like he literally walked backwards, back towards the road, to where I could no longer see him. I didn't hear footsteps after that, so I don't know if he kept walking or just stopped, but I also have no clue how the heck he got so close to me like that, or where he even came from, or how he even knew that I was smoking unless he was nearby enough to smell it, or something like that, because it's not like he heard me light it. I mean, I lit it inside, or how I've never seen him around at all. But it gets worse because I've heard noises around my house every single night since then. Not like right up on my house or where my cameras would catch him, but like noises in the orchard, near the canal, too close for comfort for sure. Really, I'm just not sure what to do. I asked the sheriff to patrol out here if they could, but they're almost never out this way, and I cannot exactly report him if I don't know where he is, or if he's actually doing anything to be reported for. It obviously creeped me the heck out, and I have a weird feeling about that dude, but really I just don't know what I can do about it, which is why I'm here. What do you guys think that I should do? Before I begin, I just want to say that this isn't my family's first ever paranormal activity experience. We're from Mexico, and in our old home my parents describe everything that they've seen and heard, from footsteps and furniture moved at night, to seeing a woman in a white gown walking across a room just feet from them. Obviously, that's a story for another day, but this one that I'm about to share is new. So we moved into a new house in VA last November. We're renting for 2 years. The place seems normal, and we've only had one semi-paranormal event, which was about a week ago, but now it's 2. So I was watching some YouTube videos on TV in the living room. It's me and our 3 dogs in the living room downstairs, my nephew, 4 years old, and my mum in their bedroom upstairs. I paused the TV and went upstairs to get a jacket to walk my dog. I open my parents' room door and ask my mum if I can head out for a few, and she tells me yes, but then tells me to come inside. I go in and she asks our nephew, in Spanish, "What did you see?" He then answers, "There was a man in the closet, and he walked out and he was gone, and he's not there, but he was there." Confused, I looked into the dark closet, which has the door opened, like normal, and walked into it. But there was nothing human-shaped there, and I've seen this kid's YouTube history. The closest that he's seen to a ghost video is videos about a slide eater. I called his mum, and she just chalked it up to him seeing stuff with a high imagination. Now yes, he has an active imagination like all kids do, as I've certainly seen him play out stories in his head when we play at the park, but never something that would actively scare him like this. But honestly though, it wasn't even that he was really scared, it was more like he was confused on what he had seen. I really don't know what to think of it. I mean, on one hand he's a kid and you just cannot really trust them, but on the other hand he's never really said anything like this or lied without a reason in general. He wouldn't say something that would scare himself, and I just cannot bring myself to believe that he'd imagined something like that. And it doesn't seem like he's just looking into the dark side of the room and imagined it, since he was on his iPad since the moment that I walked into the room. He was sitting on a revolving seat and, while scared, wasn't trying to hide or anything, just sort of keeping close with my mum, who was showering at the time. Anyway, I would love to hear your ideas, explanations, and any kind of weapon against the paranormal, because I really am not taking any chances here. After all, I live like less than 40 steps from that closet. This happened a few years ago, and really I still cannot make any sense of it. I don't know if it was exhaustion, alcohol, or, I don't know, something else entirely, but it still unsettles me when I think about it. So I was staying at my parents' house, in a separate studio space that used to be a garage before they renovated it. It was winter, but the room was heated. I had a little bit of wine earlier in the night, not enough to be drunk, just enough to feel a little bit tired. It was around 2 a.m, and I was on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, talking about life and trying to just clear my head a bit. The room was pitch black, no nightlights, no glow from the street, just total darkness. At some point though, I laid down on the carpet while we talked, sort of exhausted, and that's when I noticed something beside me on the floor. It looked like a pillow, but I couldn't see much, just a dark, soft-looking shape next to me. Without thinking, I sort of rolled over and wrapped my arms around it, and instantly something was wrong. The best way that I can describe it is that the entire atmosphere shifted in a second. The room, which had been warm, suddenly felt colder. Not a draft, mind you, not my imagination. The air itself felt different, and this feeling sort of came over me, like a wave of deep, heavy sadness. Not my own sadness, but something else. It wasn't gradual, it wasn't subtle. It hit me all at once, like flipping a switch. 1 second I was tired but fine. The next it was like something dark had wrapped itself around me, like I had stepped into something that I wasn't supposed to touch. I shot up and ran out of the room. My heart was racing. I felt sick, like I had brushed up against something that I shouldn't have. The next morning, I went back trying to make sense of any of it, and there was nothing there. No pillow, no blanket, nothing in that spot at all. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know if my brain just glitched, if I was just too exhausted, or if something else was in that room with me. But I know how it felt, like I had touched something that didn't want to be touched. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? What could I have felt? Was this some kind of sleep deprivation, hallucination, or was there actually something there? I really need some answers. I'm wondering if anyone in Hilton Head Island has ever experienced anything like this. It was a family vacation last summer. My siblings and I were all in separate condo complexes in Palmetto Dunes. We're each spending our nights with our families in our rentals. My older sibling and I are closer to the end of the resort, almost to Leamington. My younger sibling, though, is closer to the center, not far from the security roundabout after the tennis courts and all. So, it's night, and we all meet at my younger sibling's place for drinks and some dessert. She tells us that somebody is knocking at around 2:30 in the morning, and that apparently it woke her up, naturally. She initially thought it was one of her teenage boys who had gone out for whatever reason and forgot the code to get back in, but eventually finds them both sound asleep. The knocking continues. Now scared, she wakes up her husband. At that point, though, it stops. He gets up to check it out, but he doesn't find anyone at the door. So they chalk it up to a drunkard just getting the places mixed up or something. We basically all shrugged our shoulders, and we thought the same. Now, I forgot about the story entirely until I was driving back home a few days later. And here is where it gets weird, to the point of me being spooked out as I even share this. It's about 2:45 or so in the morning, and I'm having a bit of a nightmare, a bad one in fact. I'm with my ex-wife and nobody is around, but we're getting along and discussing bills or something in her house. It's a quiet summer night, and she decides to go upstairs to take a shower. And while she's there, someone starts knocking on her front door. It's loud and continues. Our kids aren't around, and I know that they're gone for the night, so I open the door to find no one there. I erroneously decide to investigate, walking through the side yard and around the back. And it was there where I discover the sliding glass door to the deck open. I yell to my ex that somebody must be in the house, but then I wake up, and somebody is literally banging on the condo door. It scared the heck out of me. My instinct kicked in. I checked my phone for messages, thinking that perhaps one of my sisters is trying to get a hold of me for an emergency or something. I wake up my wife, and then it stops. I quickly go into the kids' bedrooms, and they're all sound asleep. Finally, I walk quickly to the dining area window and I peek out, but there's no one there. There isn't even a sign of anyone having been there. The front deck area is well lit, and it's as silent as one would expect it to be at like 3 in the morning. The next morning, we left to head back home, and my sister's story of the knocking at the door right around the same time hit me out of nowhere, sending a huge shiver down my spine. I don't know if it was a real person or a ghost, and I don't think it really matters. All I hope is that I never have to find out. So last year in September of 2024, I ventured up to the Hoko Azet Road near the Blue Canyon area to set up some trail cameras. My goal was to capture footage of wildlife, bears, cougars, bobcats, or any notable deer. After scouting for the perfect spot, I found a small pull-off along the road and made my way about a mile into the dense woods, following various game trails. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of moss and damp foliage. Along the way, I gathered a bunch of chanterelle mushrooms, adding a pleasant bonus to my outing. I eventually found an ideal location, a flat area with good visibility in both directions along a well-used game trail. The forest canopy allowed only slivers of sunlight to break through, casting shifting shadows on the ground. I set up 3 trail cameras, ensuring each was on video mode before securing my gear and heading back to my truck. Now, a few weeks later, I returned to check the footage. The forest was just as I had left it, silent and undisturbed. To my surprise, 2 of the cameras had captured nothing at all, while the third had recorded only 4 pictures instead of video. The SD card felt ice cold in my hand as I loaded the images into my laptop in the truck. The first image, it showed nothing but trees and brush. The second revealed a woman in a long flowing gown, standing eerily still, clutching an old-fashioned doll in her arms. The fabric of her dress appeared tattered and her face was obscured by the shadow of her hair. The third image was even more unsettling. She was now facing the camera directly, her lifeless eyes locked onto the lens, the doll held firmly against her chest. The fourth and final picture, it had returned to the empty forest scene, as if she had just simply vanished. A cold shiver ran down my spine upon seeing this. This area, it's remote. No one should have known where I placed my cameras, let alone been wandering around alone in the woods at that hour. I hiked back to the location where she appeared in the pictures, yet I found no footprints other than my own. The undergrowth was undisturbed, as if no one had even stood there. I took the SD card home and I transferred the images to my laptop, not realizing that this simple act would invite something into my life. That night, I began experiencing strange occurrences. I saw shadowy figures moving through my home, heard footsteps echoing in empty hallways, and felt an eerie presence lingering just outside of my vision, as if something was watching me. Determined to get some answers, I decided to return to the site, better prepared this time. This time I brought additional trail cameras, perimeter alarms, and chem lights. I set up my hammock in the center of a protective ring of cameras and alarms, carefully marking an exit route. The forest felt heavier this time, as if it knew that I was there. My plan was to stay overnight and witness whatever it was that was out there firsthand. As darkness settled in, the woods fell into an eerie silence. Not even the usual nighttime sounds of crickets and owls filled the air. Armed with night vision scope, I kept watch, scanning the surrounding trees for movement. The hours, they passed uneventfully, until just after midnight, when everything changed. A rapid succession of deafening booms filled the air, relentless and overwhelming. My immediate thought was gunfire, an attempt to scare me off perhaps. But as I took a breath and assessed the situation, I realized something far more disturbing. Every single one of my perimeter alarms, they had all triggered at once. A deep, primal fear took hold suddenly. My hair stood on end as I grabbed my pack and rifle, heading for my exit point. I didn't walk, I ran. The thick brush clawed at me as I sprinted through sticker bushes, stumbling and falling multiple times. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for air, but I didn't dare slow down. My only focus was reaching my truck now. Bursting through the patch of ferns, I suddenly found myself tumbling into a ditch, chest deep into the cold earth. The scent of damp soil filled my nose as I clawed my way out, my pulse hammering in my ears. Finally, through the darkness, I saw my truck gleaming under the moonlight. I reached for the door handle, and that's when everything went black. The next thing that I knew is that I was sitting in the driver's seat. My pack and rifle, which I always stored behind the driver's seat, were inexplicably behind the passenger seat. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wheel. I quickly checked, and 3 whole hours had passed, yet I have no memory of anything about what had happened. Shaken to my core, I sped home and I immediately collapsed into sleep. The exhaustion was overwhelming for me, and it was honestly as if I had run for miles. A few days later, I returned one last time to retrieve my remaining equipment. The air felt oppressive, as if the forest itself was warning me to leave. After removing everything from that spot, the strange occurrences at my house, they just suddenly stopped. The shadowy figures, the footsteps, the eerie presence, all gone, just like that. To this day, I don't know who or what appeared on my trail cam, but I do know one thing. I certainly won't be going back to that spot ever again. So around 11:30 tonight, my boyfriend and I were leaving his house. We pet his dogs as we usually did, and we said goodbye. This is important too, just to note that all his dogs were accounted for. Mac was inside, and we said goodbye to Baby, Sandy, and Little Bit, and we saw all of them. So my boyfriend lives on a private road, and basically everyone knows everyone there. And his parents have been there for like 10 years now, and there's no new people that have ever really come there. And so if there's any new animals around, it's noticed pretty quickly here, as people talk, and literally the moment that the stray comes up, they always talk about it. Anyway, as we were pulling out, we saw eyes glowing about 50 feet away. My boyfriend thought that it was a bunny at first, or some sort of an animal, or something like that. Not to mention all the dogs that were looking in that direction, so general curiosity. So he pulled around his headlights so that the headlights would shine on it, and this thing did not look normal. It was too big to be a cat, too small to be a deer, too small to be a pig, but with that being said, if it were any of those things, it would have run away from that light, like most animals that you don't own do. So at first it went into the wooded area, but then it turned around and it started like inching towards us slowly, but would sit down after every step it took. Its shoulders didn't look like they were in the right place. To me, it sort of looked like it was walking on its back legs, but my boyfriend says that he saw it on all fours, and I'm really not sure if it was both, or maybe I just didn't see it right. This happened about 4 times before we drove off, though, due to fear, and the way that it moved just wasn't natural. It also had glowing yellow eyes, black slick coat. The coat was almost shiny, in fact, and it almost looked like it was contorted or sort of walking strange. It almost resembled a dog, but it definitely wasn't. I'm not sure, I still can't explain what we saw that night, but anyways, fast forward a bit, a detail I probably should have put at the beginning, but the whole reason that we went to his house was because he was spending the night at mine and forgot clothes. So when we left my house, I left the gate open. And the important thing to note here is that I live with my grandparents who are disabled, and this is important because my driveway is about like 150 yards long, if not longer. And at the time that we left, the left gate was open. Now, my grandparents would be asleep by this stage, and they definitely would have shut the gate. I know this because I've done this before and usually try to make sure that the gate is shut before they wake up in the morning. But the gate, it wasn't shut, and my boyfriend and I were already quite shaken from what we had seen, so We literally just turned around, and now that I'm sharing this in a parking lot, if you have any ideas, then please let me know what this could be. I guess we just want to know if it's something that we need to be on the lookout for, or if we can just chalk it up to something else. Also, if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask anything, because if you can add any more detail or pull any more information out of this, then I would genuinely be grateful for that.